one of the things that I think is a good point to drive across is the physical anatomy of the female reproductive system. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off basically with the over up here, and these are the your ovaries right here. And then if you can see, what's really cool about this, it's such an amazing picture, is I love this picture because it shows, obviously you can see all these developing follicles. There's the Graafian follicle and the expulsion of the secondary oocyte, but it's doing it out here. And this is the fallopian os, the fallopian opening, and it's happening out here because what happens is as it's expelled out here, these fimbriae, whenever estrogen is released, you're going to become engorged with blood and start this cilia suctioning movement. And I like to think of it as Dr. Zoidberg. Whenever you see him, his little, I don't know what that was, but what it is the release of this suction, and so it releases the egg into the abdominal cavity fluid, and that suction is what pulls it in. So what can happen sometimes is it can end up a lot more often than a lot of time eggs can get released and they can just kind of wander off into these abdominal cavity. Not a big problem unless it's been fertilized, in which case you do have a serious problem there. But what it is, it's released out here, and it goes into the fallopian os, or the fallopian entrance. Fallopian opening, I guess would be a better word to say there. And it travels down this structure here, which is the structure that connects the fallopian, or the uterus, the uterus with the ovum, or ovaries, whatever you want to call them. I'm sorry, ovaries is the correct term. And what this is this is the fallopian tube, named after the medieval anatomist Fallopius. And anyways, and a part of this is that I think is important to note is the ampulla area, this little region right here of the fallopian tube, because this is where fertilization is going to take place, because these eggs do not last very long. They only last 24 to 48 hours, so they don't have the whole, and I think it's about 5 to 7 days to get down here. They don't have the time. So fertilization is normally going to occur here and migrate down into the uterus. But we'll talk about that later, so don't worry about that. If it does end up not migrating, that's when you get a fallopian ectopic pregnancy, which causes a lot of sharp pain and can be, it can be traumatic and detrimental, because this is not a good place for a fetus to grow. But anyways, so that's the fallopian tube, that's the fimbriae, that's the egg, and it leads us down here to the uterus. Yes, yes, yes. And so, and what's cool about the uterus, and this is it's all, technically the strongest muscle of the human body, if you want to talk about force of contraction, but it's only the size of a pear. It's the size of a pear in a female, in a virgin, or a female who has not given birth. And so you have this interior region called the endometrium, and the inside of it, this inner lining here, and the myometrium, which is this thick muscle, because myo meaning muscle, metrium meaning uterus, and then the perimetrium are on the outside, peri meaning to the outer, like the pericardial sac, or whatever you want to talk about it, call it there. I also have a fundus. This is a lot of clinical application, because whenever you massage, this is going to distend exponentially. And when you massage the fundus, that's going to cause this whole uterus to contract for the event of a woman who's just given birth. So that's a bit of a medical application for you there. And there's I want to point out that there's a cervical canal, this little area right here where my pin is, and this contains the cervical os, or the cervical opening, in between here, and this is. And the cervix is a lot of glandular tissue. It has a lot of stuff that we'll get into that much later when we get into the menstruational flow cycle. And then there's the vagina, or the birth canal, or whatever you want to call it. And inside the vagina has a lot of smooth muscle around it. And then the hymen, which is this group of it's actually of let's see if I can find my place here. Yeah, there's my pen. It's actually a group of mucus. Then it's very, very vascular whenever it's, through very intense intercourse. And it's actually located at the very front down here. So if I could, I would, and there's a drawing of it in real life. But if I could draw all the way down there, it's closer to the front. And this is basically what helps determine the V card for women. And it can be ruptured in intercourse or intense physical activity. Anything like that can cause the rupturing of the hymen. What else? I also want to talk about when we were discussing the Mullerian inhibiting factor. Those Mullerian, that becomes the fallopian tubes. So these two would be here. That Mullerian inhibiting factor. If we don't release that, it'll develop into the fallopian tubes. And that's pretty much it for that aspect.